Color grading can oftentimes be a very grueling process, especially if you're just getting started, especially if you don't really know what to do, how to dial things in, or how to get that specific look that you're going for. Sometimes we rely on LUTs, sometimes even the LUTs don't work that well. So today I'm going to dive into my workflow, my approach to color grading my wedding films, using my brand new LUT pack, the Wayward Feels LUT collection. Full disclaimer, yes, this video is bringing more attention to my LUT pack. So if you're tired of LUTs, if you're tired of buying new LUTs, I totally get it. And there's absolutely no obligation here. I'm just gonna be talking about my process with color, and hopefully you can pick up on some of the techniques that I use that can help you in your process. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, diving into my color grading workflow here. On the right side here under the effects, this is my layout for how I go about color grading. Similar to how DaVinci uses nodes and trees and all kinds of confusing things that just goes way over my head. This is my simplified version inside Final Cut. I have an exposure and white balance adjustment. I have my conversion LUT. I have my finishing LUT, and then I have some film grain. Now, of course, some clips are gonna need a little bit more TLC, a little bit more tender loving care, as I like to say, because sometimes you just didn't expose properly, or the white balance was off, or the LUTs that you're using just simply aren't giving you what you need. So I will say that half the battle when it comes to creating a beautiful image from start to finish is in the way that it's captured. So if you have a beautifully framed shot, you dialed in the exposure perfectly, you have the white balance that is consistent, that's accurate with the location that you're in, then a lot of times the color grading process is going to be super simple. Everything is going to really work in your favor. And so I will say that the more that you can dial those things in, the better that your end product will be. So for instance, this shot right here, we're obviously outdoors. My temperature is 5600 in camera. And my exposure is right around neutral on the exposure compensation meter. I tend to go more neutral when I'm filming in S-Log3. Sometimes I even go underexposed in certain situations. But I don't ever expose 2 stops over in log anymore, like some people recommend. Because with the new cameras like the A7S III, the FX3, FX30, you don't really have to overexpose anymore. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into the first step, and that's to convert our footage to Rec. 709. I'm going to be using Gamet's base LUTs, the S-Log3. And as we can see here, we have a beautiful conversion. Everything is transformed really nicely to the Rec. 709 color space. Now I can come up here to my exposure and white balance adjustments here, and just looking at my vector scope and my RGB overlay, I just want to dial down some of the exposure. So I'm going to come over to shadows, drop this down just a little bit. And then for my highlights, I like to have them rest at 75. And then maybe bring up the midtones just a bit. And then for my skin tones, I'm going to come down here to effects. I'm going to grab a mask, a draw mask, and I'm going to check the skin tones by just drawing a little mask around his face and then scaling this so I can see it a little bit better. And on my vector scope here, it is just a little bit towards the magenta. So I'm going to come up to my global tab here, and I'm going to pull this away from magenta just a little bit. Very subtle shift there. All right. And now that we have that done, I can go ahead and delete my mask. I can fit this back into my viewer here. And then now I'm ready to apply my finishing LUT. So I'm gonna come down to Wayward LUTs. I'm gonna be using Romance. That's one of my favorites. And then I'm gonna dial the intensity down to about, I like 65. I think 65 works really well. And then if I wanna go a step further, which you could if you wanted to, you can come over to your color wheels, you can add another color wheels, and you can play around with the contrast. You can dial down the midtones, you can pull up the midtones. If you want to stylize this thing a bit further, you can absolutely do that. The only thing I might do differently is just add in a little bit more warmth in the midtones. because I like my footage to feel a little bit more warmer. Or you can even play around with the highlights. This is where you just kind of add in your own taste and style. But that looks pretty good. And then I'm gonna come down to my film grain here. I use Film Convert for all of my film grain, and I already have it set as a preset to have 50% of gain on the strength and saturation with my grain response. You can even go another step further with the film stock. Sometimes I will even play around with the intensity of the chroma and the luma just to see what kind of extra spice that can add to my footage here. And all I'm really seeing, it does kind of feel a little bit more desaturated in the skin tones, not as clinical, which is kind of nice. So that's something that you can also do as well. But I will say, I mean, from start to finish, let's just go down the list here. We added in our conversion LUT. We played around with the exposure and the white balance. We added in our Wayward Feels Romance LUT. We added a little bit more contrast, and then we finished everything off with some film grain. Now let's go to the Lumix clip, because this is where things are going to get pretty interesting. Now, for this one, I don't have a Vlog LUT that I can apply. However, Final Cut has a Vlog conversion LUT built in. So I'm going to use their built-in conversion LUT, and honestly, it's pretty dang good. Their conversion LUT is really nice, really subtle, gives you those beautiful colors. So now we're going to come down to Wayward LUTs, and we're going to use Romance, because why not? And honestly, at 100% intensity, it's pretty good. But let's try some of the others. Let's see what Nostalgia looks like. Not bad, not bad. And then let's see what Signature looks like. So I might use Signature for this one. I kind of like the way that looks. So let's come up here to Exposure and White Balance. Let's drop down our shadows a little bit. Bring down the midtones, and then pull down those highlights. Now again, this is the way I color grade because I generally like my films to feel a bit more on the moody side. So I'm bringing those highlights down a lot. We can kind of, play around with the midtones here, maybe pull those up a little bit. But then let's look over at our vector scope. We got a lot of stuff shifting in the reds. Obviously, we have a lot of reds in the frame. But let's just check our skin tones with the draw mask again and see if we are somewhat close with the skin tones. And honestly, we are right there. Like, we are dialed in on the skin tone line, which is great. That's what you want. So there's not a whole lot more that I would want to add here. I feel like from start to finish, this is a pretty solid looking clip. With that said, with the film grain, I mean, if you wanted to add a little bit more spice just to see what it would look like with one of the film stocks at 12%. Turn off, turn on, turn off, turn on. And again, just kind of takes away some of that clinical look in my opinion. All right, let's change the scenery a little bit. Let's go to a beachy vibe, right? So coming over to our conversion, let's use the base LUT from Gamut. And again, this is where exposing really well on location just works beautifully. My highlights are below 75 already. My shadows are close to 0. So there's not a ton that I would really want to adjust when it comes to the exposure and the white balance. So just add a little bit more spice. Let's pull down the shadows a little bit. I'm going to pull up the midtones a little bit because I know that LUT is going to bring in a little bit more contrast, and then pull down the highlights a little bit. I can go ahead and add a little bit of warmth, but I don't think it's necessary. So then coming over to Wayward LUTs, Wayward Nostalgia. See, I'm going to have to dial this down a little bit more from the previous clip. And let's see Signature. Signature looks good. I am a big fan of Romance though, especially for those beachy vibes. Give me all the Romance. So I'm going to go 45 here. And I'm going to come up to my white balance. I'm going to pull this away from magenta. Yes. Beautiful. And I mean, honestly, there's not a lot that I would do more to this clip. I think from start to finish, this is a great grade. Great grade. This is a good looking image. We can even go a step further and just copy the settings from this one, and let's just paste it. Let's just get rid of this real quick. Let's get rid of these so that we don't have any kind of craziness going on. And let's just command and paste everything over. And this, again, is just another way to really streamline the process when it comes to grading multiple clips. For romance here, on this clip, I might dial it up just a little bit more. Come over here to this one, do the same thing, dial it up a little bit more. I can go a step further, adjusting my exposure, my midtones, because this clip's gonna be a little bit different. The highlights even, same thing for this one. A little bit more moody, pulling down those highlights, pushing up those midtones to create that softness so that it doesn't have too much contrast. And that's the beauty of just having a nice, subtle LUT to apply to your footage here. I mean, it just very streamlined, very straightforward, just gives you that beautiful feeling right out of the box. Not a ton that you have to focus on or worry about, just making sure that you are dialed in on location, that your exposure, that your white balance, all of those things are resting at the appropriate values so that when you bring your footage back into your editor, you apply these LUTs, everything is going to be working in your favor. And it really just helps eliminate a lot of that frustration when it comes to the color grading process. And now, after looking at this one again, there is a little bit more that I want to do. Let me come up here to my color wheels. Let me add a little bit more romance to it. And then I want a little bit more warmth in the shadows there. I'll push up towards the orange. And for the highlights, let's get a little bit more red. It looked a little bit more green when I was looking at it. There we go. That's a little bit better. There we go. Yeah, I like that. So guys, there you have it. That is pretty much my color grading workflow, how I navigate every single wedding with just honestly 4 easy steps. Sometimes there's some clips that require a little bit more work, a little bit more attention, and that's okay. I mean, we're not always perfect with our exposure and white balance on location, so we do have to dial things back a bit. And another thing is there's so many color variances on the day. What time of year are you filming? What does the sky look like? Are there clouds in the sky? Is it around golden hour where the sun's behind trees? Are there blue skies? Is it overcast? Is it very gray and dull? So this one, you have blue skies, you have right around golden hour. This shot, it looks like you're around golden hour as well. We have some sun peeking here, but you're in a nice, evenly lit environment, so that's always nice. And then this weekend at the beach, it was nothing but overcast. So that's going to play a role in your white balance. That's going to play a role in how you expose. And that's going to really play a role in the overall color casts that attack your footage. Because there's just some situations that you get a little bit more green, or you get a little bit more magenta, or more orange, or more red. And it's just so many things kind of go into the final product. So you do have to be aware of those things. You have to know how to navigate those moments, and just getting the right white balance as best you can on location is going to help a ton. This wedding, it was overcast. I mean, as you can see in the sky here in the back, overcast is honestly the best. I love filming in overcast environments. It gives me just all the beautiful colors, all the beautiful tones. It just warms my moody filmmaking heart, and I absolutely love it. So again, it just depends on the environment, your exposure, your white balance, how well you capture it on location, and then just using some of these techniques, using a solid LUT pack like Gamet's base LUTs, and then using Wayward Feels LUT, if that is your vibe, if that's your style. I do hope these LUTs help you in that way. So if you have any questions, definitely don't hesitate to reach out, drop a comment below, and I'll see you next time.